Hello, my name is Brandon Ramacco, and today I'd like to talk about migraines. Through word of mouth, I seem to have become a bit of a headache specialist, as at least half of my patients seem to be coming in with headaches or headache symptoms. Now, at least half of the people who come into my office who say they have migraines don't actually have migraines, but they have some other type of headache. Migraines only make up 10% of primary headaches. Tension type headaches are about 4 times more common and can mimic migraine symptoms, particularly when they're more chronic. Now, there are some features that are unique to migraines. There are some that aren't consistent with all migraines, and some that appear for all migraines but are common with other headaches too. And some people can have more than one type of headache. Commonly, it's the tension type headache. So this makes migraine diagnosis very tricky. Now, migraines seem to have a genetic component to them, and they seem to run in families. One defining feature of migraines is the difficulty to just push through it. Migraines is the type of headache that it just stops you. It's debilitating. Other headaches, people say, yeah, I had a migraine, and, well, did you go home? No, I just kept on working because I had work to do. No, a migraine, you cannot push through a migraine. You can't just push through, I just kept on working. People who have true migraines, you know what I'm talking about. So if you can just pop an Advil and still get your work done, you have a different type of headache. Migraines start with a trigger. People's triggers can vary. For some, it's muscle pain, maybe it's spicy food, maybe it's caffeine, maybe it's lack of sleep, maybe it's medication, maybe it's changes in the weather, maybe it's changes in hormones. Could be almost anything. One way to treat migraines is to prevent them by identifying the trigger and then avoiding that trigger. There are 3 to 4 phases in a typical migraine once it's triggered. The first phase is called the prodrome phase. This is where the nervous system is ramping up in preparation to get overexcited during the main headache. This phase can last hours to days. The prodrome symptoms often involve the sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous systems. These are the fight-flight response and rest-digest systems of the body. The symptoms vary wildly between individuals. Some people never really figure out what their prodrome is like. Identifying the prodrome is extremely important in managing migraines. Some more common symptoms are fatigue, yawning, irritability, excitability, changes in energy, changes in mood, muscle stiffness, need to urinate, nausea, food cravings, difficulty speaking, difficulty reading, sensitivity to light or sound, eye dilation, sweating, itchiness, and more. It can really vary person to person quite a bit. Now, migraines are notoriously resistant to medications. Once a headache starts, then taking an Excedrin, Tylenol, Advil, it doesn't do anything. Even prescription medications have little to no effect on a migraine once it gets going. But in the prodrome phase, the migraine can be aborted. It can be frustrating as migraine sufferers that nothing seems to help, but they've likely only tried solutions once the headache is already going. A migraine is like a type of brain seizure. It's overexcited. Once it gets going, you can't stop the seizure. But aborting the migraine in the prodrome phase can be as simple as taking one of those over-the-counter pain relievers. So for some, they just pop a Tylenol and Advil, and they don't get their migraine. For others, it's hot or cold pack, it's taking a break, having a nap, staying hydrated, eating something, going to a quiet place, de-stressing. Again, this is identifying the prodrome phase. For some people, it's like, oh, why am I so itchy? And they realize, oh my God, I scratch my face every time I get a headache. That must be my prodrome. And they just, keep some Advil, keep some Tylenol, they pop it, and they don't get migraines anymore. And they're extremely thankful that they've been educated to this, because they've been suffering their whole life. Now, if you aren't successful in aborting the migraine, you'll exit the prodrome phase and you'll just have to survive to the other side of the headache. I recommend, for example, you could have a journal of how you're feeling to try to identify what your prodrome might be. And you might find, okay, so the past 3 migraines, I got really excited and felt I could do a lot of work. So it's this overexcitability that might be a sign of your prodrome. Now, just imagine if you could find that prodrome. Imagine just popping a Tylenol every once in a while and never getting a migraine again, right? It might be possible for you. Now, the second phase of a migraine sometimes partially overlaps with the prodrome phase, but it might be distinct, and it's called the aura phase. And you can have migraines with or without aura, so not everyone gets an aura. If you do get an aura, that is a more specific characteristic of migraines. But what is an aura? Like most things so far, it can vary between individuals, but it's typically a visual disturbance, like stars, lights, shadows, colors, like their vision changes, and they have a hard time sort of describing, oh yeah, everything, they just say it changes. So this phase typically lasts 5 minutes to an hour. Sadly, aborting the migraine typically requires intervention before the aura phase. Obviously, if someone's seen colors, okay, it would be easy if they could take a pill then and abort it. For some people, it does work in that phase, but typically they're distinct phases, and the aura phase is after the prodrome, and it's too late to abort at that point. Now we're at the main part of the headache. It's more often one-sided, above and behind the eye, most often described as throbbing, with sensitivity to light and or sound, sometimes nausea. And of course, this headache is extremely resistant to medication, and it's not a headache that you can just push through. It's debilitating. You just have to lie down until the headache is done. The headache phase lasts 4 to 72 hours. And there's a last phase. So after the headache, there's a last phase called the post-drome phase. This is the migraine hangover. Your brain has basically had a seizure, and now you're facing the consequences. Since this isn't a particularly painful phase, it is poorly understood. Typical symptoms may be feeling drained and tired, aches, neck stiffness, brain fog, digestive issues. You might have mild head discomfort, hunger or thirst, mood changes, and more. Continuing the trend that everyone's symptoms could be different, some people feel euphoric or full of energy. The post-drome tends to last 24 to 48 hours. Now, how do you treat migraines? First, you can try to identify your triggers and avoid them. And second, you can try to identify the signs of your prodrome. Like, you don't want to take headache pills during the migraine headache itself. They have to be taken during the prodrome phase to work. In the prodrome phase, just a massage or taking a long break or taking a nap can work. Third, you can try medications or treatments between migraine attacks to lessen their frequency and or severity. This may be Botox to the face, jaw muscle treatments, chiropractic adjustments, yoga, guided meditation, mental health counseling, massage, CoQ10, omega-3, diet changes, prescription meds, etc. Now, I'll highlight 2 examples here. I'll highlight CoQ10 and omega-3 supplementation. CoQ10 in most, not all, in most migraine sufferers reduced headache frequency by 50% and seems to reduce the intensity and duration as well. Now, the effects of omega-3 supplementation seem to be less consistent, and that's probably due to the sample populations of the studies, whether they were deficient or not. But anyway, there seems to be signs that it helps with headache duration and maybe intensity and frequency. Anyways, I hope you found this useful. This talk is actually an excerpt from my book, which you could seek out if you want to learn more. I also have another video about working out muscle knots to help eliminate tension type headaches that you may find useful. Anyways, cheers.